is the sound of Universal Broadcasting Network at UPNradio.com.
One of them wanted to be the security guy. He claimed he was a security guy.
All right. Welcome to Security Guy Radio. What's your name, sir?
Thank you, Chuck. It's Carl Herberger. Pleased to be here.
And what's your name of your company?
It's Radware.
And what does Radware do?
Radware is a public company. We're focused on our mission is around keeping you up, keeping you available. Two broad products categories. One is security products, public company, roughly $150 million of sales in security products. And in that space, we're really known for anti-DOS, anti-DDoS.
Oh, that's interesting. That's a good way to phrase it.
Yeah, so we...
and for my nieces and nephews, DOS is denial of service attack.
Denial of service, yeah. The ability for people to consume your resources and your engineering assumptions to render you down, unavailable.
Right.
But in addition to that, there's many ancillary, what I would call satellite technologies that factor into keeping you up, and we produce those things too. Things like fraud, web application firewalls, things like IPSs, and so forth. And they work together in what we call an attack mitigation suite or system. On the other side, we have the opposite problem, where you have user error, configuration errors, bottlenecks with traffic, bottlenecks with devices.
Oh, that's interesting. Configuration errors, yeah.
Yeah, so we deal with something you call the application delivery controlling technology. So these are load balancers and application performance monitoring tools as well as acceleration tools. Together, we think the problem of outage and delay can be handled by one set of comprehensive technologies and can give you the information you need to be able to return you to green or even as faster than green. So
now, here's what I don't get. So I had a computer in '84 when there were two floppy drives, right? And I used to bring it to the police station and they'd make fun of me.
Right.
We don't need a computer. What are you talking about, right?
I
kind of get the whole network, and back in the day they called it hierarchy security management, and your terminal was dumb. And you had a big room full of banks, and that's how it ran.
Right.
And then fast forward 25, 30 years, now we have the cloud, which is really hierarchy storage management.
Right.
And when you used to take care of your own network and your own stuff internally, and I came from Fox and Disney, right?
Right.
Now there's all this outsourcing.
That's right.
Now, is that because the brain trust goes where it needs to be and comes from where it needs to come from?
Yeah.
Because I find that even at the studios, when I had a desktop guy come in, I sometimes knew more than he did. He was 20 years old and I was 40, right? And
so there's many ways of looking at this, I think, Chuck. One of the ways that you can think about this is the way that the electric industry grew up. If you remember when electricity was founded, initially you needed to be a big company and you needed to produce your own electricity. They called that cogeneration.
That's right.
You produce your own generation.
Some had their own, like in downtown LA, the first electrical building had their own plant.
Yeah, that's right. In fact, when the Industrial Revolution started, you would always allow for the ability for you to make your own electricity because you couldn't rely on the grid. In fact, you had bigger requirements than the grid could provide. And you generated your own electricity. You had electricity managers. You had folks that actually helped produce costs and that. Eventually, we all realized, and there's still some of this today, that the generation of electricity can be centralized, and it can be managed, and it can be rationalized, and it can be delivered through the cloud in a much more efficient manner in many cases, not in all cases. However, if you have high uptime requirements or you can't rely, because of a geography or so forth, on the generation or the distribution of electricity, you have to have some capacity to generate your own electricity if you want to stay up and available, right?
Oh, interesting. Okay, I get it.
Yep.
Right.
So I think what's happened with IT is that it's too expensive, just like the days of cogeneration electricity. Really, it's a luxury that we can't afford to have our own IT, to have our own systems, our own hardware, our own software, our own people, and be able to get the efficiency and really the value that we're looking for out of IT. So you have the cloud, and the cloud is now a varied set of production plants
Right.
producing IT services that are rendered to us. And I think that provides for a lot of value, but it also provides for a lot of risk. Availability is one of the biggest risks to that. The
Right.
cloud goes down. Typically in today's business environment, you go down.
Right.
So it's a symbiotic relationship. It's one of the things we're trying to protect, is how do you protect uptime when you're not in control of essentially your uptime.
And you can't really be, because the way you describe the network now, it's out there for everybody. It's not just your network.
Yeah, that's right.
Not your intranet anymore,
Yeah.
per se. Yeah.
So some of this is what do we have today and what does the future look like? I think today we have a system of networks that are dependent on each other. I think in the future we'll have a lot more isolated systems. The Internet of Things is ushering in a whole other way in which approaching networking. Maybe you have lightweight networking, you have heavyweight networking, and so forth. Things don't need HTTP, right? HTTP, Hypertext Protocol, is designed for people who can't understand numbers.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
They need nice pictures, right?
Right.
And good, nice names that they can remember. You don't need this with things. So I think what you're going to find is a fractioning of networks, and it's not going to be just the Internet any longer.
So, back in the day at the studios, we had mostly cops ran studios.
Right.
And they were actually studio police departments originally.
Right.
With the FBI registered and everything, right? And there's a good reason for that. There was protecting of the clients, which are the stars, and we want to keep it in-house and stuff
Right.
like that. And then we started getting high-tech. The model changed to, let's bring an IT guy in here. And then it became, let's put the IT guy in charge
Right.
of physical security and network security.
Right.
What do you think about that? I got some opinions on that.
Yeah, so it's a fabulous question about the convergence between physical security and information security, which I think is an immutable trend. Why is that trend? Well, I think a lot of it is because the physical security space on detection is clearly going IP, Internet Protocol, where it used to be all proprietary protocol.
Right.
And once you have an IP, you don't need to have the same kinds of unique kind of detection people that you would have when you can actually maybe conserve cash, conserve resources, and actually use the same folks that are doing your IT security do the alerting that are coming off of your physical security
Right.
devices. So in pursuit of efficiency, you find a lot of convergence that's going on, there's no doubt. In addition, the IT allows for things that are unbelievably powerful from a detection standpoint, which were never allowed for before in an analog physical security system. So for example, video surveillance, what's happening there? Today, you can actually leverage everybody's camera. You don't need one specific camera set up in one specific area. There's now technology that you can leverage every camera available to you, including mobile cameras on people's phones and so forth, to be able to detect something.
Right.
This is an amazing brand new. Also, cameras now can also detect not just visual images and behaviors within visual images, but they can detect fires. They can detect when people have accelerated heartbeats, or they have temperatures. When you think of biohazards and so forth, right? So you can actually get these into platforms that are more beyond physical security. They're really something other than physical security.
So here's my divergence with that
Right.
argument, which is a good one.
Yeah.
And first, it's driven by money.
Yep.
Oh, and just to backtrack a little bit, I talked about this on a white paper once. There was a trend back in the 90s when I was using the internet, and if you typed in the word security, it meant locks, keys, guards. It doesn't mean that anymore.
That's right.
You have to actually type in physical security,
Right.
which is at the bottom of the search engine,
Right.
and all security means IT now, which is
Right.
interesting. So that industry lost their own name and brand,
Right.
and now it's the computer guys. Now, I've had many computer guys tell me this. I can program this to do what you want me to do. I
Right.
can make it alert. I can make it do things. I don't know how to catch a bad guy. I don't understand the people component
Yeah.
to understand intent,
Yeah.
to assign maliciousness to something that would not look malicious, right?
Yeah.
So this is where I'm a little concerned, that if we make it all digital and all automatic, and we lose that human component, which is your intuition, your training, your instinct, and we don't know how to prosecute the guy, it's all for naught, right?
So this is the funny part about it, Chuck. This is what my keynote's actually about. The keynote is how we're taking distributed technical systems that are not smart, but they're automating things. They're automating, let's say, the ability to do quickly behavioral analysis on somebody left a bag behind, or the fact that somebody is sweating, or the fact that somebody has an elevated heartbeat. They're automating things, but you're right. Today, it still goes to a person to be able to do the fundamental analysis,
Right.
and to figure out whether or not that's good or bad.
What does it mean? Right.
In the not-too-distant future, the pursuit of all of this is to make sure that the biggest problem that we have today, which is the human analysis element, is no longer human, right? That the speed and the problem, the amount of endpoints, if you will, people on the physical security side of the house, the amount of algorithms that have to be applied against the endpoints allows it to be not a human problem. You cannot get the dexterity out of a human mind
No, you
or
can't.
people
Right.
to be able to actually insurmount the problem. All of that today, if you look in the labs, the R&D labs of physical security and information security organizations, they're in pursuit of what is fundamentally artificial intelligence on actually identifying what's going wrong.
Right.
There's two major breakthroughs that have gone on in the last 2 or 3 years. One is being able to have computers recognize facial.
And we're here with that. It works.
Yeah,
10 years ago it was
it
infant.
was,
Now,
right.
yeah.
But not just facial, but facial in crowds or scores of people.
Anytime I put something on Facebook, they recognize my sister in a dimly lit bar. It's like, how did you know that's my sister, right? It's very good. It's amazing.
It's really amazing.
Yeah.
And Google in particular is really, they purchased a couple of companies, and they're really a vanguard in this kind of area. So I think what you're suggesting is true historically. I think going forward, both the opportunity and maybe also like a huge risk in terms of what does this mean for us as people when we have basically computers thinking for us.
Yeah, and I've talked to some people, at Microsoft and such, and I've been told that they're, the big bosses, the big tech companies actually sit up and think about AI and worry about AI.
Yeah,
and
right.
Consider it. My version of it is this, that it's going to get to a point where it says,
I know what to do.
I know what to do. I'm going to write my own code.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go do this.
Yeah,
and it may go against what we wanted to do, unfortunately.
Yeah, that concept is called singularity.
Okay.
I don't know if you're familiar with
No,
this.
I'm not. Let's talk about that. Yeah.
So singularity is a broad concept, which is exactly what you suggest, is that there will become a day in a lab or otherwise where, unbeknownst to us, our computer will do something without programming because of its own free will.
Here's another thing I thought about. Less than free will, and I tried to explain this to somebody once, and I didn't do a good job, so you help me out. If you put 1 million monkeys in 1 million typewriters, you know this thing, right?
Yeah.
Eventually, they're going to type War and Peace just because they type so much.
It's a math problem, yeah.
It's a math problem, and
Right.
I'm thinking, my son's a mathematician, we go over this stuff all the time,
Yeah.
and he says, well, yeah, technically, right?
Yeah.
So instead of what you're saying, I'm suggesting that maybe enough code is written, and you know what? There's no code that's never been written now.
Right.
Therefore, I'm just going to choose from my library of code and insert it. Instead of writing their own, they might just go find it.
Well, actually,
and act,
I think
right?
I think we're saying the same thing. In fact,
Okay.
one of the claimers, one of the foundational people that basically is pointed to on the concept of singularity is a fellow named Kurzweil, Kurzweil. Kurzweil is a mathematician. And his claim to singularity is not a claim around this idea that we'll have a specific kind of technology or a specific algorithm that will lead to singularity. It's simply a math problem, like you're suggesting, right?
It is math, yeah.
Now, here's the difference, though, is that he has dates and times associated with it, right?
Because he did the math to figure out when that's going to
It's
happen.
a logarithmic
Interesting.
scale.
Wow.
Right? So he suggests, as we stand right now, that it'll be 2023.
That soon?
That soon, right? So I won't be able to
Wow.
retire. When at least, at least in a lab, and then he actually takes it out to a very broad spectrum. Now it sounds like scary stuff, and by the way, my keynote has a lot of this in it, but it's different than any place we've been before. And the reason why is this: in about 6,000 years of human evolution around offloading physical labor, it's all been about tools on physical, even robots in factories, even the robots that we've come to know and love, they've not offloaded thinking. We've never
Right.
had that capacity, right? When and if this happens, this artificial intelligence, and not just this, I think we're moving down this road where fundamentally we are beginning the process of outsourcing fundamental thinking. First,
Interesting concept.
In piece, and then second, in whole. Automation plays into AI like a transistor plays to a computer. A computer needs the ones and zeros.
Right.
In order for you to get actionable AI, you need automation. The tool has to be able to not only be able to think, but then take quick action on it, right? So what's happening in the physical security space is you have tremendous automation going on, and orchestration, and the automation of provisioning. You can quickly throw detection or mitigation devices. You can quickly do alerting. You can provision new capabilities quickly, and frankly, you can automate the whole process, right? That's what's key for once you start thinking or offloading thinking for you to be able to get things done, to take things. So what's happening right now is we're going through a process, another revolution, really, where we're offloading or outsourcing or otherwise changing the way in which we will get thinking accomplished. And I think that that's very different in human evolution. And who's to guess where things going down the road? If you believe Kurzweil, he said 2023 will be roughly plus or minus. By the way, he said this year computers now think better than mice do. Mice's mind, right, this year. That happened in 2015. Yeah. And he says in 2045, and this is kind of like, in some ways for me, a little psychobabble, but he says in 2045 on the same logarithmic scale, a single computer will have more capacity than every single human on the face of the earth thinking at the same time.
I read, like what's going to happen in 2025, and one of the things they said is they're going to come up with the computers that are biological, because a hard drive only spins so fast that it melts, right?
Right.
And they think they might match the speed of a human brain.
Yeah.
One thing I've always been frustrated about my entire computer career, it's not as fast as me thinking. And I'm no genius, by the way.
I'm pretty sure most computers are faster than me at this moment. I think that changed this year, if you know what I mean.
So really, this is kind of, if I boil this down for my nieces and nephews that are musicians, by the way, they got their own record label and band and everything, right?
Nice.
And I say, look, Damien, Taylor, eventually there will be no song that was never written.
Right.
Right? Mathematically.
Yeah. Right.
And that would happen to me sooner than what this guy's talking about.
Well,
but
actually,
it won't. You know why? Because the humans write the songs. Now the computers themselves are writing their own things,
they
evolving their own way. So that amount and ability to write things quickly and do the code, it's exponentially growth.
There's a big fallacy that computers are not creative. Actually, there's already today, there's computer-generated art, which was imperceptible from human art. There's computer-generated music that's imperceptible from human.
It's true.
It's unbelievable.
Well, but a human still has to do that, right? Are you talking about a computer coming up with its own?
Well, coming up with their own computer-generated, it's amazing, right? Now, just as a point of reference, the New York Stock Exchange today, how many humans are involved in the tradings?
20,000 maybe?
20% of all the changes today, and none on the floor. There's no more voice calls. And by the way, it's not just the New York Stock Exchange, it's all stock exchanges. 80% of all stock exchange trades today are completely AI.
See, now that's a little scary.
It's completely, of course.
Waddell Reed, a company you're familiar with maybe, right?
Yeah.
They're pretty much strictly an algorithm for
right.
the market. We know that when these things happen, we're going to take your money and put it over here, then we're going to move it around. And I compared the notes, and guess what? They're pretty good.
That's right.
They're really not that far off from some genius stock market guy.
Right.
Very interesting.
And reliable, they don't sleep, it's predictable. And by the way, from an insurance perspective and otherwise and all sorts of different levels, you could see where this would be a preferential route.
Right.
You can see situations where people said, listen, I've got a job, humans need not apply.
I'm still worried. Maybe it's because my hair's white, but
no, I'm with you. I think
still need to
there's big questions, huge questions that this opens up. The challenge that is that I think most people are struggling with the idea that this will come, as opposed to understanding and embracing the fact that this is. It's not that it will come. And then what do we do about it? Jurisprudence-wise?
Well, we talked about that before the show, right?
Yeah.
So I remember this stuff coming up when I had this case in Fox where there was a distributed denial of service attack in 2000 actually. Really, nobody knew too much about that. Secret Service did. They came in and took it over. And we talked about the fact that a judge who's probably older than me sitting on a bench probably didn't have a computer, probably didn't have Nintendo, right? And how can he rule? Not effectively. I don't want to knock these guys, right? But, you're trying to apply old law to new technologies and new intent. It's very difficult. It hasn't caught up. Morality hasn't caught up with the law in those areas.
Think about it. We have in tax, we have tax court. In patents, we have patent court, right? And why?
Right.
Because it was recognized that this stuff is so complicated, it's beyond human comprehension for a general,
That's right.
for a general trial, either lawyer or judge to be able to even comprehend what the topic is
Exactly.
about. I think
Do we have an IT court yet? We should.
Well, so I think there's a whole bunch of things we have to start to think of. These are bigger questions, and you're right, I'm not sure that we have a jurisprudence system that completely comprehends what we are currently evolving into.
Right.
And what the current issues are. There's this. We were just involved this past week in a massive DDoS attack on a company called Proton Mail. It's all you can read it in the press. And Proton Mail is a secure email server. Why did they get attacked? Because they're a secure email. Their risk factor was that people didn't like the fact they're located in Switzerland. They're in a jurisprudence area that allows for non-prying eyes from anybody.
Switzerland, right?
In Switzerland,
like
right.
the Swiss bank account thing, right?
Exactly,
Okay,
right.
makes sense.
So they went there purposely, and because of that, they believe both nation states and other people felt that they were harboring and masking and masquerading folks that had dark conversations.
Interesting. Conspiracy theory stuff.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But as a result, resulted in massive attacks on the company.
Did they succeed?
They were down for a week, and eventually they actually crowdsourced funded a security solution.
Wow.
They asked their community to fund them because they didn't have the means or the methods. It turns out they chose Radware. It's all public knowledge and so forth, and they're back up and running now. But what a fascinating story. Their risk profile was they made themselves so secure that angered people.
Well, one theory I propose to in physical security, right?
Right.
It's you see these guys, black suits, glasses, bulletproof Suburban. I wonder who that is over there.
Yeah, right.
It's not the janitor.
Like you draw attention to
exactly.
yourself.
So, I might recommend for travel in Mexico, you stick you in a Russian Erky, whatever that car was, that nobody drives and knows about, and low key.
Right.
Quick, low profile in and out with people that can pay attention,
right,
observe, analyze, and then respond. Fortification is the worst type of security. And I know that's what people are going to think I'm a lunatic, right? You have to build time in every security model.
Of course.
Because if you can't respond to it, it doesn't matter how big your wall. The Great Wall of China is obsolete.
That's exactly right.
Right. Now, what is the same analogy for a Great Wall of China in the cyber world, right? Are there things that are becoming obsolete? You did talk about the fact that HTTPS is kind of, that's not really where we're going.
It's true. I have some philosophies along these lines too. I'm 100% aligned with you. I believe we paid not enough homage to two broad qualities in security. One is the detection, because everything, let's face it, everything's bits and bytes, right?
If you can catch it before they do it, that's the place to be.
Okay, so let's talk about detection for a second. There is, if you can catch them, so there's two attributes to that. One is being able to actually, with high quality, definitively say this is illegitimate versus that's legitimate.
Right.
Right. That is a rough task, and I don't think a lot of people spend that much time, but arguably we spend some time with detection. That's one attribute. The second attribute, and this is where no time is spent, I think, is how fast you can resolve that question.
Your response to it.
Just the fact that you can actually enumerate the fact that there's a problem. If it takes you a week or 2 weeks or 4 weeks or 10 months.
It's too long.
And by the way, this is where we are largely. So the time element, the delta time, means that people can actually infiltrate and take advantage of the fact that they know your ability to decide and act is so slow that they can be in and they can be out, even if you get to the point where you enumerate them.
Now, this is fascinating to me, because if I take this and put it in the physical world,
right,
and I have a guard at the Fox Network Center,
yeah,
and I got a door and I got access control, no biometrics, let's assume I did, right?
Yeah, right.
All the physical security is designed to delay and deter.
Right.
So I can kind of watch you in the entry process and say, bad egg, come over here.
Yeah.
That happens literally within a matter of minutes or seconds sometimes.
Roughly real time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I'm interested as to why, with all the technology, the network can't identify a threat.
There's a couple different
and it might
functions.
take 10 days. I mean, I don't...
There's a couple different functions.
Is it a definition problem?
There's a couple different functions. One is the amount of traffic.
Yeah.
The kinds of traffic. So, in other words, a lot of traffic's encrypted. A lot of it's encoded.
Oh, yeah, that's
true. A lot
true.
of it's encapsulated, right?
Are attacks encrypted?
I'm sorry?
Attacks. Do they encrypt attacks?
Course, yes,
oh, interesting. I didn't realize.
A larger part. About 20% of attacks. As everything goes encrypted, now attacks are encrypted.
Oh, interesting.
Right?
Okay.
So it can complicate dramatically
your ability.
So think about it. You go back to physical security. Suppose suppose the attacker looked authentic. It looks like a UPS truck. And you know what? They have legitimacy to them.
Right.
Right? And the UPS truck goes in. Now the whole perimeter security has been breached, but you don't even know it. Right?
You don't know. That's right.
And you may not realize it until after the UPS truck leaves, and then you have two or 3 hours later when somebody says, hey, what the heck happened here, right? This is the world we live in right now.
Or more worrisome is you never find out.
So that's
you never know they were inside.
So the detection is one piece. One is the quality of detection. The second is the speed. And I can tell you, we know from Target, from Home Depot, we know from J.P. Morgan Chase, we know that the speed and detection, even if you have good detection, is a major, major, major problem, right?
Yeah, Target took a long time, didn't they? A week or something, or was it earlier than that?
They were doing their job, and even when doing their job, it took in the neighborhood of 3 to 4 months.
Oh, that long? I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah. So by the time they really realized they had a problem, it was already in and out. The second piece is mitigation. We spend no time really talking about mitigation. What does this mean? In the world of security, you have to mitigate the threat, right?
Right.
So it means you have to characterize the threat, and you have to be able to definitively isolate that threat from legitimate traffic. So there's two major problems with this. One is, it used to be that traffic was all defined by humans, a legitimate user and illegitimate user. Today, roughly 50% of the traffic is non-human. It's bots.
Oh,
right?
50%.
It's
Wow.
actually over 50%
Wow.
today. And by the way, in the next 5 years, the amount of human traffic will be less than 10% relative to bot
That's
traffic.
amazing.
Right. So we have to actually define and understand the legitimacy of automated processes, which we call bots today, and unautomated processes, right? So the problem is exponentially getting harder. And the tools you have available to you to actually do the mitigation is becoming less and less relevant. So there's quality of mitigation.
Well, two-way authentication is not relevant?
So let me talk about mitigation. Today, a lot of people go, well, we'll just block everybody from China. We'll GeoIP block.
Yeah.
That's obviously low-quality blocking. Why?
Right.
Because you're going to block some legitimate traffic that comes out of China. Your boss might have flown to China. You might have a customer that's flown to China. You might actually have like a Google engine located in China or so forth, right? So we do these things. IP blocking. I can talk about why IP blocking is rife with blocking legitimate traffic because of spoofed IPs and so forth. IP, GeoIP blocking, ACLs, black and white lists, black hole, all of them are based on IP, and IP has a faulty problem in that you don't fundamentally know that you're blocking good versus bad, right? So the world of mitigation needs to strive for higher quality mitigation. The second piece is fast mitigation. I can tell you that the ability to move from detection to quick mitigation. So let's first get into the idea that we can do high quality detection very fast.
Right now we don't, but let's assume we can.
Then you can say, okay, now I know who it is. Block them. That takes time too, right? And today, that's a double that you can add up these times.
Right.
That double piece of adding up turns out to be a situation where you have people that it takes an insurmountable time for you to get to the actual point where you actually block. So it'd be like somebody coming into a bank and you know exactly who robbed my bank and you say, call Charlie. And Charlie's got to take 30 minutes to get to the front door before and the person's gone.
Right.
Gone. And that's what right now, that's the situation we live in security.
Interesting.
That's exactly the situation we're in.
Do you like two-way authentication? Does that help?
Of course. Anytime you can add more and more authentication. You know, it used to be you walk into a bank, you have your passbook.
I remember the passbook. That's right.
Right. You had a passbook.
They write in pen, and
that's right.
you trust their balance.
And they issued you your passbook.
Yeah.
And you were yourself, right? So there was something you know, or something you have, something you are. Everything was there.
Yeah.
Right. Today we have to facsimile all this stuff through this electronic means.
You ever heard of text power?
I haven't.
So two-way authentication is I log into Quicken. Quicken calls me on the phone. I send a code back to them or something, right? Or my phone, right? Or they text or Google texts you a message.
Yeah. Two-factor authentication.
TextBar does it reverse. TextBar says, we're going to give you the password on the screen.
Right.
Because you're going to send it back to me because I don't know if that's your phone now.
Right.
So what they try to do with this system is they authenticate your phone because everybody's got a phone, right?
Right.
And that's fairly easy to authenticate as far as an IP and all that kind of stuff, right? And then the job is you log into Google. Google gives you the password on the screen. You send the password back on your phone that way.
Beautiful.
And it cuts out that ability to spoof.
It's beautiful.
And he's trying to get that out there, and I interviewed him. It was fascinating. But people right now are saying, oh, no, our two-way version, the other way, works just as well. But again, you can spoof almost anything. It's fascinating stuff.
It's fascinating, yeah. You can spoof. In fact, we've seen attacks where every single attack has a new IP address.
Wow.
So if you're blocking based on IP, it's like a whack-a-mole game. You're never ahead of it.
That guy back in 2000, he sent out 350,000 emails, which now seems like, what? That's it?
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
But it shut down the whole network around the country
right.
for two
Exactly.
studios.
Yeah.
And I remember looking at it at the day when you could still ping an address. I pinged it, and it went back to this guy's address in Boston, and we found him, and fairly easy to catch him back then.
And today it wouldn't be so easy.
And he did change all the headers. He had a little sophistication about him to try and figure out where they came from. But now that's old school. That's not going to.
It is old school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So are we all doomed? I'm not feeling good with this conversation,
I
Carl.
think, no, it's not so much a doomed. I think what happens is it's a chess match, right?
Yeah.
And every once in a while, you get out of sync with the fact that your chess game isn't as good as the other guy's chess game. The difference is that the chess match doesn't really end. Hopefully, it doesn't end, and so there's no destination, and we have to employ technology that helps match or maybe even better against the bad guys.
What getting rid of the cloud, which we talked about, is the old hierarchy storage management.
I don't think it's
not practical.
It's not a practical or achievable event. I
Okay,
think it's a question
we're here.
about-
That's it. That's
I
what
think
it
it's
is.
a question of living with, right?
All right.
And there's new technologies. There's a lot of innovation. There's a lot of money going into security. I think there's a lot of promise. But the bad guys right now make a good living extorting through the internet. I mean, what you really have, you have unbelievable new ways to do old things.
Right.
There's talking about, let's forget the cyber cartels and the idea that today it's much easier to make money via cyber criminal and cyber burglaries than it is in the old way, right? It's so much easier.
Or maybe than drugs. It might be easier.
In fact, they say a lot of drug cartels are actually finding it is much more lucrative,
Yeah.
right? But think about things like cyber, obviously cyber ransoming is going up, but there's also now things like cyber murder situations and many other kind of more heinous crimes are being considered and thought of. With IoT, you have the ability to maybe manipulate things, well-advertised things in healthcare, like insulin rates and all sorts of things, whereas people now are ideating around the ideas, can I create this crime in a cyber way?
Well, I think Mission Impossible had one of the movies where they manipulated the guy's insulin device, right?
Right.
I mean, who's the guy that just hacked into the chip in a self-driving car?
That's right.
No, it wasn't self-driving. It was just a regular car.
There was Tesla.
Prototype.
There was also a famous Jeep Chrysler hack that. So these things are coming.
I'm hoping that the white hats and by the way, I'm a white hat, right?
Yeah.
And my computer programmer, who I've had him write custom programs for over the years, always said, "I am so glad you cannot write code." but I understand it, right? And he goes, "Why is that?" He goes, "Oh man, you just be a friggin' ruthless.
Yeah.
Hey, we can't do that. Let's shut that down."
Let's
right?
face it. There's
white hat to show, because the decision makers sometimes are reluctant for all kinds of business reasons to act.
Yeah.
Target thinks they're going to damage their image. I stopped going to Target.
Me too.
Because I like their image.
Yeah.
And I was not happy with their dishonest part of it. They're trying to save face. They blew it, right?
Yeah.
Whereas, you know what? I expect me to get hacked, but I expect you as Target to be better at it.
Yeah, that's
response.
Right. That's right.
Yeah.
That's true. That's exactly true.
So very interesting.
Yeah, being hacked, I think, is a lot like catching a cold or being sick. It's going to happen. It's an eventuality, and you have to deal with it.
What's a tin can and a wire we can give for our listeners? Some old school advice. I always unplug my computer at night. I take the wireless off. I've now eliminated 10 hours where I can be hacked. Literally, right?
I have a blog out there that I write at radware.com, and one is called The Immutable Laws of Security. And it's about, these are the kind of a step-by-step guide about things that you can do that really, if you're really kind of either paranoid or you don't want to be in this world, that you can actually do to keep yourself from this or help inoculate yourself from it. It's things that aren't always convenient. Of course, convenience is one of the things that helps fight security, if you will.
Right.
So it's not always convenient, but they are very effective security measures.
How do we get that blog? Give us some web addresses and stuff.
All right, so it's a couple things. One is if you have to eschew things like open. We know this. If you have a building with nothing but windows or it's just completely open, it's almost impossible to secure, right? It's just, we know this. Right?
Hospitals are very difficult to secure.
There are many
multiple access points,
Right. So if it's open, software is the same way.
Right.
Systems are the same way. So we can fool ourselves by saying that open is secure. It's not, right? Open, because it's known. So this is the second piece. If it's highly known as a technology, That means that human ingenuity being what it is, they figure out ways to be able to get around the thing.
Right.
So the more obscure, the more arcane, the better it is for you. The third thing, and this kind of blows people's minds, is how long it's been actually out in existence, right? So as a function of time, if you have something that's old from a systems perspective, it also had the ability for people to get to know, even if it's arcane, the system and actually get around the system, right? So proprietary systems suffer from this because they have people that may know the system because it's been out there for a long time.
Can we assume that those systems are compromised and might not even know it because of the time factor?
And we know this from history. There's many pieces of evidence that this is the case.
Okay.
Like the bash vulnerability, if you're familiar with this, an old vulnerability that has been around for 10 years that nobody knew about, and it came out and so forth. So I think these are like three attributes that you can think about. So how do you think about this in your own life? I think you find things like that are not popular to run your systems, that are not very well known, that are more arcane. I think encryption is another great example, right? We all run towards encryption algorithms for whatever reason that are known and well understood. And for that matter, well adopted. I think it's one of the reasons we run after it. It's totally the opposite of the academics around encryption. Encryption is supposed to be, there's an algorithm that's only known or known by very few.
Very few.
Right, very few
and
people.
everybody's got the public key now.
Exactly.
Makes no sense, yeah.
So this idea of known and accepted and standard encryption is actually counter to the idea of actually doing secure encrypted communications.
Very interesting, yeah.
So, I don't know how we got to this world, but this is the world we live in, right? And there's ways. Today you can find proprietary encryption. You can find proprietary operating system. You can adopt more secure means if you're really nervous about this stuff to communicate your things. I think VPN services are very, very powerful. There's very good new VPN services that have strong algorithms that are very unique and proprietary. I think you should seek these things out.
Right.
Yeah.
Carl, this has been fascinating.
Same here, Chuck. It's been great.
Next time you're in LA, come on by the studio. We'll do another show. This is fascinating.
That would be
Thanks
fantastic.
for coming on Security Guy Radio.
Appreciate
it.
Thank you, Chuck. It's been a real
Welcome to Security Guy Radio. What's your name, sir?
My name is Scott Barker. I'm the general manager of 3R Technology based here in Seattle.
And what is in Seattle again? There's all kinds of people based in Seattle. That's fabulous. What does 3R Technology do?
3R Technology is mostly a recycler, but we specialize in remarketing of retired IT assets.
Retired IT assets.
Yes.
People come up with new phrases all the time. I love the way that sounds. Was there another way to say it? An old hard drive? Is that another way to say it?
Well, yes, or an older model server or networking equipment, et cetera, et cetera.
Oh, because a router. I didn't think that a router would need to be.
If you think about it, the large companies tend to have the biggest, best, brightest all the time of everything. But a smaller company, if they want to save a little money and don't need absolutely the nth degree piece of technology, they can buy it for 10 to 15% of what it originally costs, and
that's what you mean by
all
recycling.
kinds of money.
Oh,
yes.
I'm thinking recycling in the blue bin, but you're talking about repurposing.
Absolutely.
Oh, interesting. Okay, I didn't think about that.
Absolutely,
that's a whole new industry, kind of, right?
Yes, and it really is important. It's very important to us because not only does it help our clients save a tremendous amount of money, but it also allows them to. It also allows us to keep IT out of the or put it back into the stream without having to actually melt it all down and rebuild it.
Yeah.
So it saves a lot of energy that way as well.
So we're talking about hard drives, we're talking about routers, we're talking about anything that's a piece of hardware now.
Absolutely, and one of our specialties, which is rather funny to me, is we sell a tremendous amount of server racks. So, I mean, what is going to go wrong with a server rack? But people trade them out for different ones,
right?
And we pick those up and are able to repurpose them. And so instead of spending $4,000 or $5,000 for a rack from a company new, you can spend $200 and have basically the same thing, except it's 4 years old.
They're very expensive. When I was at Fox and Disney, and I work with purchasing a lot on things because we had to keep track of our assets, right? And boy, when Rona had to go get a rack for the broadcast center, I mean, it's just a box of square. It's like Tinker. What is it? an erector set. I mean, it's nothing fancy, right?
Right. It's
but
just it's
the
basically
only
a
people
big
that make
piece
them.
of steel.
Yeah, only people that make them. That's amazing.
Yeah, so we do a tremendous amount with that. We also do a lot of audiovisual things. Our clients are mostly individuals rather than companies.
That's interesting.
As far as the repurposing.
So you're not necessarily doing Microsoft. You could, but I mean, really, it's the middle business or smaller business guy.
Absolutely.
Now,
absolutely.
is this a service where this big, beautiful green machine we're looking at comes to you? Is that the idea?
It can. So we have a couple of different things with our hard drive shredding. We can pick up hard drives, and we can just wipe them using a binary 3-pass wipe,
Right.
Or we can pick them up from a company and shred them if they prefer that, or we can take the system on. And one of the reasons that we decided on a shredder at this size rather than a larger one is this allows us to put it on our truck to take it wherever we need. We've gone into data centers, and if we go into a hospital that has HIPAA compliance, they actually cannot allow the hard drives to leave their building.
Sure,
they have
makes sense.
They have to actually be
which
shredded.
Which
on
is
site.
odd to me because I don't really care if you know I have appendicitis. I really don't care. I do care if you get my bank account info off the other hard drive that's not under HIPAA compliance, right?
That's true.
It's kind of
That's
weird.
True. Yeah.
Weird.
And I always figure the biggest part for me for HIPAA compliance is there happens. It's important that whether we know that you had an appendectomy or not, but your Social Security card number is on that, and that's much more important.
Well, that's true too. I mean, and that's another thing with personally identifiable information. In California, where I come from, those laws are super duper strict, right? And it used to be that businesses as routine use your Social Security number as your ID number. And I used to say, no, you can't do that. Oh, yeah, what's the problem? We're going to use a variant of your Social Security. Can't do that either, right? So this data management and destruction is very, very important. I remember the biggest problem we had at Fox was people stealing videotapes, because if they stole the videotape, then they could make a copy of it and sell it in the alley right down the street. Now it's all digital. It's even more difficult, really. It's a bigger challenge.
Well, and now if they pirate something from someone like Fox, they don't sell it down the street. They sell it on the internet.
It's on the internet. Yeah. And we used to go down in the Santee Alley in L.A. and we would, find people selling a videotape that looked like it was new, but guess what? That movie's not in the theaters yet, dude. So you can't really be selling it, So who are some of your clients? I mean, not by names, but I mean just kind of industry-wise. Who's using you?
So industry-wise, we have a lot of healthcare. We do have a lot of higher-end security companies, and but really our bread and butter is kind of the small companies that just want to make sure that their information is handled correctly. We do carry an R2 certification, which basically, as part of that certification, we have to prove that once something gets to our hands, it will be handled in a proper manner.
Well, that's good, but I'm skeptical, right? So I did not like Iron Mountain coming by and picking up my paper and taking it somewhere and telling me they're shredding it, right? Because you got the human factor. I mean, you got a bad employee, stuff happens, right? How do you overcome a reluctance from a client to say, just drop your hard drive off at the shop here, we'll take care of it, or we'll pick it up and take care of it. I like to have you come out with this machine and say, let me see it go in there and be done.
Absolutely.
It's got to be some reluctance there, right?
And that really is why we decided to go, when we did purchase the shredder, that's why we decided to go with one that was portable.
Because you're getting feedback from people saying, I want to see it.
Absolutely. The other thing that we will occasionally do, and we have done this a few times, and that is we will, if the client is reluctant to have the machine come on site, we will take bins that lock, that we have basically a numbered lock. We will put the hard drives in it. We will tie the locks, and then when we get back to our shop, we will actually take a video of ourselves cutting the lock and putting the hard drives into the shredder.
I like that. And that covers you.
Absolutely.
Now let's break this down into two things. We talked about it briefly. You have destruction. I'm not going to call that recycling because that's not what you're saying.
That's correct.
So destruction, shredding, getting rid of it, that's one thing. And then the recycling part. What do you guys recommend for recycling? I think hard drives are so inexpensive. I just feel more comfortable you just shred it and I buy a new one. I mean,
Absolutely.
Or do people say, listen, dude, I don't have anything expensive on there. No secret scroll stuff. But if you want to send it to some underprivileged computer somewhere and recycle it, that's okay with me. Then you are going to wipe it to DoD standards?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. And as part of our certification, not only do we wipe the drives, but we also have 5 times a year, 4 times internal and 1 time external. We do an audit of hard drives. We pull a random hard drive off of the shelf that has been wiped.
Yeah.
Once we wipe them, we put a label on them, as you can see, and we will just take a random drive out of somewhere in our system and pull it out, check to see if we
fire
can
it up,
check to see if we can access anything 4 times a year, and then once a year we take 5 drives, we send them out to an external auditor.
Well, that's a good idea.
They take these 5 drives, they put a file on one of them at the root level. They give us the 5 back. We don't know which drive it's on, of course. We wipe the drives again, and then we send them back to the auditor, and they try to access that drive.
Oh, that's very interesting.
And if they are able to access that drive, then we know something is wrong in our process. Now, it has now been... We've done this 4 times, and yet they have yet to be able to access any files. So
all right, that's good.
So we know that our system, it works.
Yeah. Who's your market for these hard drives? I mean, do you resell them? Is that your another part of your business?
Absolutely. Yes, we do resell them. Most of our market for hard drives are individuals who are looking for a new drive, small companies who are needing extra drives, or they purchase a server and they decide that they need to have the 8 drives to fill it up. We do also do some wholesaling of drives to various companies around the country.
I may have gotten one once, but
that?
I know it wasn't from you.
Yeah.
I got a horror story, right?
Oh, yes.
So I go to Staples years ago, and I buy that $2,000 computer. I always buy a $2,000 computer, and it always lasts me 6-7 years, right? Because you get the high-end stuff.
Absolutely.
Right? And I get there, and I'm doing all the things I do. I strip out all the crap that I don't like to look at, and I don't know. And all of a sudden, I start seeing these files, and I'm going, "What? These aren't my files. What the heck's going on here?" I go back to them, and they go, "Oh, well, I'm not sure how that happened." Blah blah blah. So either they sold the computer, somebody brought it back, and they didn't wipe it, right? Or I'm thinking they bought, not your company, but an unscrupulous used hard drive somewhere, because it's cheaper for them to manufacture a computer that way if they're buying discounted hard drives, I guess.
Absolutely.
Are you seeing this in the industry? Are industries doing this?
We have seen this, and actually,
I'm not picking on Staples, by the way, because they didn't
Yeah.
make the computer. I forgot
That's
what
true.
brand it was, but you know what I'm saying?
And we have seen that, and actually. Probably your first idea was the correct one. They probably sold the computer. It was returned, because I know because that is much more likely.
Okay.
Large companies tend to start with new hard drives. They don't.
I would
they don't
think
tend
so.
To, yeah, they don't tend to start with used hard drives. But I know that if we sell a computer and it's returned, it's returned the next day, they decided that they didn't want this, they wanted something different. The first thing that we do is we pull out the hard drive and wipe it, and they can tell us until they're blue in the face, I didn't even turn it on. But as soon as it leaves our building, we have to assume that somebody put something on it.
You have to, right.
We will wipe it off and start again.
Yeah. Now, do you do this for, let me get my terminology correct. There's a SATA drive, and there's a solid state digital drive,
Yes,
right?
yes.
And then these are the HDDs or H.
HDD drives. So no, these are probably SATA drives, or they might be IDE, which are the older style. We also deal with SAS drives.
Now, solid states are different. You because it's a circuit board in essence, right?
Yeah. Solid states are much different because there's no moving parts, we do deal with all different types of drives.
Okay.
The one thing that we are not able to do, just because of the way that they are structured, is we are not able to wipe fiber optic drives, which several companies deal with.
Right.
And so when we get a fiber drive, it's immediately shredded. The other thing that we also do, if a drive comes to us and is not able to be wiped, basically if we put it on our wiping system and it fails,
Right.
then immediately it's shredded. So basically there are two options. So at that point we know that the hard drive has failed. There's no way to access things on
Right.
it, except yes, there is, and so we immediately shred it. So anything that walks through our door has to be either wiped or shredded. Those are the two options.
It's funny you should say yes, there are, because I had a computer in '84. It's my first computer, and they were 2 floppy drives, by the way. When there was no hard drives. All right.
Absolutely.
And then a hard drive came out, and I bought it for $1,200, and it was 25 megabytes. Oh my God, I can save 25 disks. And I went to the bank and financed it for $1,200, right? Because I didn't make any money as a cop. And the technology's just gone so far forward. So my buddy, who's on the radio show, Paul, and he used to be with the Scotland Yard and did the Queen Mom
yes.
detail, and knows all the secret squirrel MI5, 6 stuff that goes on over there. He said their policy used to be that they would take a hard drive, and this is back in the early 80s when it was all just kind of starting out, right? And they would shred it, and by shredding they meant small little particles, right? And they put it in a bag, and they lock it in a vault, and they keep it for 50 years. And I go, what are they keeping it for 50 years? You can't put a hard drive together after it's shredded. And they go, you can't now, right? But in 50 years, you probably can. And that's very interesting foresight.
Absolutely.
And my question to you is, it seems like 3R Technology and other people around here are getting that and trying to keep ahead of it, because the technology goes up. What are we going to do when we get biological hard drives? Because that's coming. Right?
Absolutely.
Because that thing can only spin so fast and then it melts.
That's true.
So you got to do something else. So I'm glad to see that there's companies that are taking lead on this, and not just assuming, I push Control Delete, it's all good. And the average person thinks that, right?
Yes.
And pushing Control Alt Delete or formatting a hard drive is actually better for me when I do forensics, because it puts all those files in one little place on the hard drive that I can go find. So you really have to do this, even if you're an average person. You throw that hard drive in the trash. First of all, in California, you're going to get in big trouble for it. And second, your data's going to get recovered. It's just going to happen.
Absolutely.
It's not too hard to do.
Absolutely. And then, so the other part of it for us is once we shred it, then we send it to a downstream processor, and what they do with it.
New word, downstream processor, defined for my nieces and nephews.
Downstream processor. So we
Well, this is Seattle. You have a lot of salmon and things up there. That's what I'm thinking about.
So basically, we mostly collect things and put them together by different types of things. We don't do a lot of processing, which is basically breaking it all the way down into its component parts. And breaking it down into commodities at that point.
So you're saying you could sell different components of a hard drive, not just the hard drive itself?
Actually, if we took a look at this hard drive, if we wanted to do this to sell to our downstream processor, we could take the drive itself, we could pull the board off of it, and we could sell the board separately.
Yeah, you put that up a little closer. We can take a look.
Absolutely.
So that little green board.
Yeah, we could take the circuit board off of it and sell that separately, and then the platter inside, because of course this is made up of a variety of different things.
Right.
What we do instead is we shred them down, we send them to a downstream processor. They melt them down into, and basically their system has the ability to actually pull the components apart, and so they end up with just metal and gold and platinum and all of the different,
just like
different things.
The newspapers, aluminum cans, and plastic bottles. Same
Absolutely.
kind of thing. Oh, how interesting!
And the surprising part of it for us is in the case of circuit boards, in the case of the green boards, whether it's on a hard drive or whether it's out of a computer or things like that, there's about 2 or 3 large companies in the world where all of this stuff goes.
Oh,
because they have the system that will actually melt it all the way down into its components and extract pure gold and extract pure platinum and all the other.
I never thought about it that way. And if you take 1 billion hard drives, that's a lot of gold and platinum.
Absolutely.
Now, do they pay? Do they buy those from you, the downstream people?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. And I say absolutely, but it depends on what it is. Some of the things they purchase from us, some of the things we actually have to pay them to get rid of because of what the process is
and the law and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and the biggest thing as far as costing, and the biggest challenge in our industry is CRT glass, because it's glass that has lead in it.
Oh, I heard about that. Yeah.
Week after week after week, you hear about companies that basically go out of business because they have a huge amount of CRT glass that they have to pay to get rid of, and they don't have enough money to pay, and so they just walk away.
Now, do we find CRT glass in things like those new phone screens or protectors?
No,
that's not, because there are some glass screens.
Yeah, pretty much now it's limited to the old CRT, both televisions and monitors.
Okay.
And so the amount of CRT glass is going down very fast,
exponentially.
Yeah, because a lot of the basically CRT monitors are going away and are gone, and CRT televisions you basically can't buy them anymore.
Right.
And so it's all now about who has what in their closet or are still watching it in the case of a television or something like that. So and so the more that goes away, the less problem there is. Now, other parts of the world, that's not there. It continues to be a problem, because those are significantly less expensive than the flat panels, and so third world countries, you will find CRT monitors and CRT TVs all over the place because they're cheap to get.
Yeah.
And so that's something that you have to be very careful with.
Now, is that something you guys would recycle for somebody?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And basically, any electronic components, you might be able to handle it.
One of our former employees used to say, if it plugs into the wall, we'll recycle it.
Well, I'm glad to see this is a viable business, right? Because there's exponential growth in all those things. And I think I read something, one of these futuristic guys says by 2025, every single human on the planet will have a smartphone. Literally. And then there'll be singularity and connectivity to everybody in the world in some way, right? And that's just a lot of junk. It's a lot of hardware. It's a lot of pieces. It's a lot of stuff. And then, you know what? If 6, 7, 8 billion people want to get a new phone next year, what are you doing with the other 8 billion phones that you just used? I mean, that's a lot of stuff.
It is. It's tremendous. It's a tremendous amount. When I first got into this industry, how long
have you guys been in business, by the way? I forgot to ask.
Our company has been around since 2001.
Oh, that's pretty old in this business.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We focused originally more on repair and things like that, and then we kind of moved into the recycling side. And since 2005, that's basically been our only process. And I was doing some reading the other day and was reading about how much e-waste there is being produced all of the time. And when I first got into this industry, I thought, okay, this isn't a huge industry. And then I started thinking about, you think about a small company. Let's say you have a company of 500 people. So those 500 people have a PC on their desk. Maybe they have a laptop as well. They have a monitor. They have a printer. Then they have networking things, and then you have copiers and things like that. And you still have then all the peripherals that all the server side and things like that go with it. And most companies at this point will completely turn over all of their technology every 3 years.
Oh, it's 3 years now.
Yeah.
Wow. That's
that's
rapid.
So think about how much. So this company of 500 people, which is not a huge company,
right?
Think of how much technology is coming out of this one company every 3 years, and usually what they'll do is they'll separate it a third, and so every year about 175 of these desks of these people positions are getting a new copier, a new printer, a new monitor, or 2 monitors. That's the big thing now. A new PC, a new phone.
I think I get a new phone every year because A, I break it, or B, I say I like the bling bling over that new phone, right?
Absolutely.
And what I do is I send that phone down through my family, right? So somebody in the family still has an old Motorola slide flip phone or something, that's about 6 years old, but they still use it, right?
Absolutely.
But
absolutely.
yeah, that's an issue. So you want to shred something for us?
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Now, is shred the right word? When
It
I think
is.
of shred, I think of paper and fine little particles, but not really. That's not particle level, right?
No, this is not
Yeah.
particle level. Actually, what it ends up looking like after it's shredded is it ends up looking like this, and so it's,
And those are the things you're going to ship out to pull the components out of.
That's correct.
Oh, interesting.
That's correct. So this is actually a very easy machine. We just drop the hard drive in it.
That's very easy.
and it shreds it into its component parts. I don't know if you want to try to bring the camera over. You can actually look directly down.
Oh,
into
here,
it
let's
and
do
see-
that.
and
Let me
see.
take it. Let me see if I can do that.
Are you ready?
Yeah, it might be. I can see it. Yeah, go ahead. That's cool.
The nice thing about this machine is we can also use it for what we call hard media, which is like hard drives, DVDs, or DVDs and CDs. We can also use it for soft media, basically floppy disks. Although you don't find many floppy disks anymore, but
I
we
still have
can.
some. I
We
still have some.
do. but
That's my
but
tin can of wire, just
especially-
in case all this other stuff fails. I still got something
Yeah,
to work.
especially backup tapes, because people
People still use tapes?
they still use tapes, and there's still a lot of transitioning off of tapes and onto hard
Well,
drives.
it's funny you should say that because I go to ASIS, which is the American Society of Industrial Security Convention. There's 20,000 people show up, 3,000 vendors, right? And one of the big things that happens is that there's all these people with digital cameras, right? They have 4K, amazing stuff. This is all broadcast quality for $300.
Absolutely.
Just one of the guys that heads of Tyco told me that I think it was 2014 is the first year that digital outsold analog. It's amazing, right?
Yeah.
So that brought to mind when you said, "Oh, people are still transitioning." And I go, "Really? Who would be? They still are."
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
Why don't you have a $300 digital camera instead of your $700 analog? But a lot of that stuff's still out there. In other words, they're still selling it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I actually have my uncle is actually a professional photographer, and and about 90% of what he does is of course on digital now. However, he still has 3 of his Olympus OM1s, and every once in a while
camera.
he will do a thing that he takes his Olympus OM1 out. He actually lives in Alaska, and when he does a cold shoot, what he calls a cold shoot, so during the winter, if he's going to be outside and things like that, so I mean it might be 30, 40, 50 below, because he lives in Fairbanks. He will use his OM1 because he said no camera that he's ever had will handle the cold like his OM1.
Oh, very interesting. Yeah, I'm a little concerned that we're going to go all digital and lose some ability to have a backup for it, so to speak, right?
Well,
in other words, a tin can and a wire, I think you need to have still. I mean,
absolutely. Well, think about what happened in the recording industry. Everything went to CDs and now what's the big popular thing?
Yeah, it's MP3.
But even more so, the big popular thing now is records.
Oh no, you're right.
It's
my
like,
kids
because
are record nuts.
Absolutely, because there is a specific sound that you cannot get on a digital.
You can't even replicate.
World.
Some people try to replicate that digitally. It's not.
It just doesn't work. It just doesn't work.
And it's nothing like listening to the Beatles' original album on like a Moran's turntable and a Phillips needle, and there's just a different sound to it. It's not stereo, by the way, right?
Yeah.
It was that weird mono whatever they called it back then, and it's just a much better sound.
Absolutely, and so I think at some point we are gonna reach the point that basically everything is going to be digital, but people are going to start realizing that there is a reason for some of this analog thing, and then it's going to make a comeback, just like it did in recording.
So there's a theory, and I can't remember the name of it, but it basically says this: eventually, that hard drive is only going to spin so fast. Eventually, the speed of light's not good enough. In other words, if we reach the top of our ability, the technology, and you just can't go there because of physical limitations any further, what happens? One theory is, well, we just stay at that point and we just work it out. No, the world and people and humanity and everything has always gone up, right? What happens when you can't go up anymore? It's an interesting question.
Yes.
Some people think you
it is.
slide back into chaos in the Dark Ages. I don't know. What do you mean it doesn't go any faster? I have to make it go faster. Now I have to scrap my project because my project I had won't work. Because everything on technology is based on the premise that I'm going to make it better next week. And if you get to a physical limitation point, that's why looking at the bio hard drives and things like that.
Absolutely.
Hardwiring your brain, because nothing's faster than your brain.
Right. Right.
So I don't want you shredded any brains in the future, but I'm just saying that's.
Trust me, I don't think we will.
So what kind of growth rate do you guys have on this kind of stuff?
We have just been progressively year over year, getting bigger and bigger and bigger, collecting more and more things from our clients. We will process a couple of million pounds of
a million pounds. Okay,
a couple million pounds.
Can you give me a number of how many hard drives that is? That's a lot of hard drives. That
would be a lot. That would be a lot of hard drives. So
hard drives are not even a pound. Hard drives.
No, it's a little. They actually average about 1.3 pounds.
Oh, okay.
Because some are smaller.
Yeah.
Some are less, of course, and some are more. But so that's a tremendous amount of hard drives. But it's. We will process that through our system. Then a percentage of that will go to our downstream processors. A percentage of that will go to our refurbishment department and be refurbished and then resold. And a percentage of that basically is already in good working shape. All we need to do is clean it up and resell it.
And by the way, you're located in Seattle. Are we talking 1 million pounds of stuff in Seattle only?
Absolutely, yeah.
Oh, so you're not coming to Los Angeles?
No,
Oh, wow.
not at all. No,
that's amazing.
So, well, and
when you open up a franchise branch, I'll be interested in that. Kind of like got junk trucks that drive around,
Right, absolutely. Like it's interesting, and we obviously in Seattle have a lot of competition. But there, because this is a huge tech area.
Wow.
And but we.
What's your market share? Do you know?
I don't.
There can't be a lot of guys like you doing this.
There are actually more than you think.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And that continues to show just how much the volume.
I'm getting out of radio. I'm going to get into this. I think this is good. Scott, thanks for coming on Security Guy. We got to cut it at 30.
Okay.
But if you're ever around LA, look me up or Skype in if you got some latest stuff going on, and let's do another show. Thanks for coming on Security Guy Radio.
Thank you so much for letting me talk.
Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Security Guy Radio. What's your name, sir?
Hey, I'm Luke with Townsend Security.
What does Townsend Security do?
Townsend Security does encryption and key management. We help keep people's sensitive information safe, help them meet compliance, and just really help protect information.
I was talking to another vendor about the compliance issue. And back in the day when I was at the studios, we did our own thing because we could afford it, right?
Yeah.
That's gone now, isn't it? It's all outsourced because you can do it better than an internal company, right?
Well, people bring in our solutions to provide the encryption keys when they're doing their encryption. A common thing that people do poorly when they think they're encrypting data is they're basically putting that encryption key, storing it next to that encrypted data, which is essentially like leaving the keys to your house underneath your welcome mat.
I wasn't aware of that. So let's talk about that. So, in other words, they're putting it on the same server in the same directory folder or something like that?
Yeah.
It's kind of wacky.
It's just a very poor practice. Yeah. So what we do is we provide a way for people to take that encryption key, remove it from that environment, and manage it according to security best practices.
Now, back in the day, the cloud was called hierarchy storage management. It was a big room with a bunch of terminals, and your computer was dumb. Nothing got saved on there. Now the cloud is that, kind of, right? But now it's at your terminal. I worry about the cloud.
A lot of people do.
I mean, but we're not going away from it.
No.
It's not
it's
going
here
away.
to stay.
It's here to stay. And one of my vendors over here was telling me about the response time problem. I assume that if I have an attack, and let's say a good encryption, but now I want to respond to this guy, I could have a lag time of days before I know there's an intrusion, before I know there's an attack, right? So that's why the encryption is so important, because at least if you can keep that data protected for 10 days while you find this guy, I mean, that's the whole point.
Yeah, encryption is really an important component of a defense-in-depth approach to data security. You know, I think if any vendor here was to say that they are the magic bullet, that's not going to be true.
Right.
But
without encryption, there is no magic bullet.
Yeah.
You got to have it.
Yeah. I think encryption is an important component. Absolutely.
Right. So, denial of service attacks, and I'm dumbing this down, right?
Yeah.
For my nieces and nephews, okay? Where I send out 1 billion emails to shut down your server, that kind of thing, or attack. Used to be not encrypted, but as the network started encrypting, they started encrypting. Let's talk about that in layman's terms. Why that's significant? Why that's more difficult to fix or challenge if the attack's coming? You have to decrypt the attack first, or I mean, how do you do it?
Sorry, I'm having a hard time hearing here.
If I'm attacking your network with an encrypted attack, how do you handle that? How do I stop it if it's encrypted? Right.
That's a good question. I don't know if I actually have that answer.
Okay. I mean, it's just. They can hide better that way, I would assume, right? If they're encrypting their attack.
I would think so.
Yeah. Now, I'm looking at your sign over here. Can I mention your clients?
Yes, please.
All right, so I got Scottrade, Costco, EMI, Atlas, Royal Bank, Harley Davidson. These are all Fortune 50 brands you guys got working here. I don't see Target on there. Maybe they should be on there. Little inside joke.
Yeah.
Right, so clearly Costco's a big operation. Staples,
Yeah.
I mean, American Express. I mean, they've been in this business a long time, cyber stuff, right?
Yep.
Why do they come to a company like you instead of trying to do it themselves? What's the advantages, disadvantages?
Well, it's really important that people realize that, you know, cryptography and things like that, not something they should do themselves.
Okay.
Townsend Security has been through NIST validation and FIPS validations, and something like 50% of the crypto that goes to NIST to get validated gets turned around because it's not done correctly.
50%?
Something that, yeah,
wow.
it's a very high number. So it's really important to use these sort of solutions that show that you're lining up with industry best practices. So that's really where we help people out. And our solutions are available in the cloud as an HSM, Cloud HSM, and VMware. And you were talking about the cloud a little bit earlier. And there still is a little resistance for a lot of people. You know, we have customers that will actually take our key manager, deploy it in the cloud as well as their data center. So they're kind of taking a hybrid approach to key management. And I think that's very important.
Are they different? Do they use two different keys?
Nope, same key. They just
Little
mirrors.
backup or
Yep,
okay.
high availability, production, different locations.
Talk about encryption for the average person. What do they think is being encrypted they're not really aware of?
What? Sorry, that?
What's being encrypted that the average person's not aware of?
Oh, you know, it's it really determines.
Not email. I mean, I'm not thinking my
Yeah.
Outlook's encrypted. It should be.
Well, you know, an interesting thing. I often think that not enough is being encrypted.
That's my guess, right?
Yeah. So, personally identifiable information, PII, not just a social security number, not just a credit card. I did a recent speaking engagement where we had everybody stand up in the room, and there was a room of about 200 people, right? And it was, all right, everyone sit down if you live east of the Mississippi. A bunch of the room sat down. Sit down if you were not born in February. Everybody sat down, or a bunch of people sat down. And sit down if you don't have a dog. And we narrowed this room down to like 2 people.
Oh, interesting.
So you wouldn't think that kind of information would be considered private or need to be protected.
Right.
But guess what? If we can narrow that room of 200 down to 2 people, that's going to make it hackers have an incredible advantage when they're trying to social engineer.
That's a great way to say it.
Yeah.
So in investigations, all I need to find you is 2 things. Any 2 things.
Yeah.
I need a name. I need a first name and a last name. I need a first name and license plate, a first name, and your dog's name. Because somewhere you put that down on something.
Yep.
And if I can't find it in the cyber world, I'm going to go out and knock on doors and find out that your dog's name is this, and therefore you go to this dog park, and I'm going to do some triangulation, figure you probably live within 5 blocks, I'm going to find you, right? And I think people don't understand that, my social security number, you know what, who cares about that? Really, the other stuff can be more damaging because it's so open, and it's out there, nobody's thinking about it.
Yeah.
That's a very good way to think about it. And I don't get why they don't, just as a matter of automation, encrypt all email servers. I don't get it. Outlook's not encrypted. Google may be encrypted. We don't know it. I don't really know. But
I think people are moving towards realizing the importance of security and encryption. I mean, you have services like Box.com right now that are allowing people to bring their own keys. You have Amazon bring your own key. Even like you have SQL Server that has EKM, Extensible Key Management. They provide transparent database encryption with TDE, but they kind of realize that, like going back to the don't leave your keys underneath your doormat, they realize that that's an issue, and so they have EKM, Extensible Key Management, for vendors like us to plug in and provide a mechanism for people to be managing their encryption key outside of that SQL Server environment.
Do you think if everybody with a device, and they say by 2025, every human on Earth is going to have a phone, right? If every device and every person used encryption, would this make hackers' jobs a lot more difficult? Or would they just say, well, I'm going to eventually get through that one thing eventually if I want to?
That's a good question. I think that encryption certainly will help.
In other words, if I can't get in through Costco's database, maybe I get in through my mobile app for Costco on my phone.
Yeah.
Who knows? I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah. There's, it goes back to, again, there's several things that people need to do. I believe the Target breach even just happened because stolen vendor credentials. And that's a case where something like two-factor authentication could have helped.
Okay, let's talk about that. So I have that with Google, I have it with Facebook. I use it all the time. It's a huge pain in the ass. Every second it logs off, I got to do it again. Quicken calls me on the phone from Chicago and says, we just got a detection, here's the number. I don't know why most people don't demand that they use that. It's kind of optional. If you lose things, I'm just not going to print up my list of extra codes. I'm not going to do it, all right? I'm too busy, right? And then you're locked out and you're screwed and all that kind of stuff. Have you ever heard of a thing called text power?
No.
So that's two-way authentication in reverse. So instead of Facebook sending you a text and you put it in the computer, Facebook would have your code on the computer. And then it's your job to send it back. That way, it authenticates your phone, because that way I can't spoof a phone. Google has no idea where that text is going. But with this thing, they authenticate your phone first. It becomes a key. And that key is authenticated on Google server, and they won't accept any text from my account except from that key for that phone. And that's kind of getting some inroads and making it a little more secure. What are your clients most worried about encryption? PII is kind of an easy one. That's a gimme. We can't have Charlie's social security number floating around. But what other things are they worried about?
Well, a lot of people come to us because they need to meet compliance, like a PCI, DSS.
California,
HIPAA,
huge compliance issues in California.
A lot of that. And they also know that it just really can help them manage business risk. CEOs are leaving companies when they're on watch when there is a data breach. It's getting really very real for people. And we see data breaches in the news every day. And, on average, a data breach costs a company over $5 million, or about $150 or $200 per record. And I don't know very many businesses that could just think that that's no big deal.
In California, it's old. I haven't read the code for a while. It was $1,200 a breach per person.
Yeah,
that's a big ticket to write.
So I mean, you're not only just paying for credit monitoring, which I have not had to pay for years because of
me too. I've been like five freebies, yeah.
But I mean, there's loss of customers. I think you mentioned off camera here about not wanting to shop at stores that have had a breach.
Well, it's my show. I can say it. I mean, I love Target. They always have what you need. I wasn't upset that they were breached. I figured it's inevitable. I just didn't like the way they handled it. It just seemed like somebody had a spreadsheet in their bottom drawer and they're going, what are you talking about? Now, in your opinion, when a breach happens, is this because that company tends to have not had encryption? Is that what's going on?
Not necessarily.
Or they just hacked really well?
I mean, people could get in a numerous
Okay.
ways. If you get the right credentials, no matter how much encryption you're having, data's still going to get out.
Right.
So it really goes back to the defense in depth approach.
Now we had the old PGP, 128 keys.
Pretty good privacy.
Yep. Supposedly the CIA couldn't crack it. Blah blah blah. Is that obsolete now? Is there better stuff now?
PGP's great.
It's still good. Okay,
Yeah.
that's still solid.
Yep.
Are there higher algorithms, more than 128? Is there something that's tougher to crack or anything like that?
It might be a little bit beyond my expertise.
Okay. Just curious.
Yeah.
Because they say, if you had a Cray computer and you wanted to try and crack it, it'd still take you 100 years or some crazy thing.
One thing that we like to say regarding encryption is hackers don't break encryption, right? They find the keys.
Well, let's talk about that. That's very interesting. I think a lot of people are going to assume when I breached your network, I did something secret squirrel, high-tech, James Bond
It's
stuff.
not Hollywood at all.
You're just finding let's say it's a key in a drawer,
Yeah.
physical key. It's a cyber key in a folder, in a file.
Yep.
And you said that a lot of people are keeping their keys in the same network, in the same directory next to the encryption.
Right.
Yeah.
Not a good thing to do.
Good thing.
I actually heard something recently that if you could harness the power from the sun, it would take many, 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 many years to brute force encryption. When people are breaking encryption, it's because the keys were not managed correctly.
Now, you provide the encryption service. Do you work then with another outsourced company usually who's managing the network? In other words, you're not just selling your key to the desktop guy at Fox. You're going to have a solution-based company that's managing the network, and those are the guys that are going to be putting the key in the sloppy place probably, right?
Well,
that's not your issue if the key gets put in the wrong place.
What we do is we sell a key manager. So people can deploy that in the cloud, in their data center.
Oh, good.
Yes.
Okay. And you help them solve sloppiness
Yes.
and where not to put it and things like that.
Yeah. So if they're using a key manager and they're doing it correctly,
right.
They're aligned. They can align with industry best practices.
What do you think the biggest problem in the industry is now, as far as breaches? Besides, not having encryption, is it really just management? Is it inexperienced guys? I'm 55, right? I had a computer since I was 20-something years old. 2 floppy drives. Hard drives weren't invented. I kind of get this stuff. I come across IT people that are 20-ish. No offense.
Yep.
Right?
I'm not in my 20s anymore.
No, good. Right? And I go, well, what about this? What's DOS? I don't know what are you talking about, right? And I'm wondering if there's a gap there, an information gap, and the people that kind of started and get it, and people that came in new and don't think backwards to think forward. Does that make any sense?
Yeah. Well, I think education is a big part of where we're falling down around security. Although I do think it's getting a little bit better, but I think education is a big component of it. And
do you find it hard to hire people in your organizations because there's not those technical trained guys that we used to have back in the day?
Yeah, well, when I say education, I just even mean at the corporate level. I think.
Okay, I see. Educating the end users,
Yeah, to know what they need to do.
Well, I think the reason for that is, all right, so I was a cop, and cops my age are retired or they're becoming chiefs. And in the corporate side of it, corporate people my age that are still in are VPs, maybe CEOs, they're starting, right? And they didn't have Quicken back in the day, right? It's like, secondary thought, and then they sub that work down to somebody, and you guys just go take care of that. And I think at the C-level, you have to be bought into this. And you hear some of these stories, like you said, the C-level guy resigns because he doesn't get it, and he was on his watch it happened, right?
Data security has to be a total part of your GRC. It just does, and I think that it needs to be more of a component. And I think that security teams probably, I think we're here at Secure World. I don't know too many people would probably say that they have the budget that they want. And,
oh, really? Even with this core
I
group?
think there's always people that need more budget and want more budget.
Well, in my world, security is first driven by money. If it was driven by a solution or people, we wouldn't have any problems, really. It's just, but it costs money.
Because there's not often, it's hard to show an ROI on encryption. It's more of an insurance policy.
Okay, that makes sense. But if you are breached and it costs in California $1,200 per file and you have 1 million files, you got a big problem.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think people still are a bit of the mindset, it's not going to happen to me. But as we've talked about before, it's, but we have guys in the FBI saying, hey, data breaches aren't a matter of if, they're when. Right. And what's happening is people are now not, am I not going to have a data breach? It's, yeah, you're going to have a data breach, and you're probably going to have another one. So you need to plan for a data breach.
Right, it's really mitigation more than anything.
Yeah.
How do you monetize? Are you subscription-based? Are you per-user-based? How's it work?
We have several different options, actually. We have subscription and perpetual licenses. And so I think I mentioned earlier, our Key Manager is available as a hardware security module, HSM. We can take that HSM and work with a hosting provider and then essentially have a cloud HSM. We also have VMware instances, and we're also in the cloud, so AWS and Microsoft's Azure.
Good, how are you? Security robots, are they coming?
That's a good question.
Technology there? It's getting there, right?
Yeah, it's a good question.
Yeah, they're outsourcing a lot of things people used to do, and I'm just concerned that we rely too much on the computer without the people component. I'm assuming once stuff's encrypted, is there monitoring software inside your suite that lets you know somebody's fiddling with a key or tampering or try to crack something?
That's a really important component, I think, of that defense in depth approach. You have to have these SIEM solutions that can give you alerts. And you have to make sure that you're paying attention to these SIEM solutions.
You can't just plug it in and walk away.
No, I mean, we have seen data breaches happen when people are monitoring these logs, but not really monitoring them.
Right.
And, that's, you gotta
back in the day when it was it Word or Windows, what was it? 4? Not 4. Windows NT.
Yeah.
And I took a class, I learned how to do all the Windows management stuff. And we had a breach at the studio, and I went to the IT guy, and I said, let me see your log. Oh, no, we don't have it. Why? Oh, we turned it off. Why do you turn it off? Oh, it's too much storage.
Yeah.
Oh, we could have cracked the case for that, right? Are you still finding people who are just doing weird things like that on the networks?
Not me personally, but...
no, not you personally, yeah.
I would imagine that would still happen.
Very interesting. Well, Luke, thanks a lot. It's been fascinating. How do we get a hold of you guys, your website and all that stuff?
Yeah, we're at TownsendSecurity.com. You can find us the usual places, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. We have a YouTube channel. And we also have a developer program. So anyone that wants to, if anyone wants to get some development licenses to our Key Manager, we want people learning about key management. We want to help with that educational challenge that people have.
I should encrypt my mobile app.
Yeah.
Maybe somebody will listen to it more.
So, we can help you out with that. And then once you go into production, you're going to know how to do it. You're going to know how to do it well. And we just really want to support the developer community.
Great. Luke, thanks for coming on Security Guy Radio.
Right.
I appreciate it.
Thanks.